Oh, buddy, it's Saturday morning, 10 a.m. at Corbet Street in downtown Tarentum. We're at the Poduty Live Podcast Theater. I have an incredible guest, one I will admit makes me spiral every time I see him on a webinar. I learned so many things. I learned so much about Knowledge Graph that I spend 3 days trying to figure out what he's talking about. It is so impressive to hear and share some of the knowledge that we're going to get today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, Jason Barnard.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. And that, what you just said, really resonates with me, because I was talking to a friend the other day and I was saying, I thought that I explained all this incredibly simply. And she said, no, you explain it. You think it's simple. But everyone else is sitting there going, oh, right, okay, I've got to catch up. And you just confirmed it. 3 days digging into that rabbit hole. I'm sorry.
I love it. I mean, because you're showing me what's possible. And I've been a marketing director for 20 years. And,
right.
I know just enough to be dangerous. It's why I don't play with hand grenades, right? I know enough. And when you teach me things and I learn new things from you, I want to go like, what's he talking about? How do you do that? What's that mean? And I just go down this wormhole trying to figure out. And the knowledge is incredible. And it really opens your eyes to what a knowledge graph is. And I got some great quotes coming up. Oh, go ahead.
Really quickly, a knowledge graph is a machine-readable encyclopedia that engines like Google and Microsoft Bing and ChatGPT and Perplexity use to fact-check. And if you imagine Wikipedia is basically a knowledge graph, but it's very small. It's only 6 million articles, and Google's knowledge graph is 54 billion, and that's over 10,000 times bigger. And that's a really important thing to remember, that Wikipedia is a tiny, 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 tiny encyclopedia knowledge graph. Google, 10,000 times bigger. And even Kalicube, my company, 25 billion data points, 73 million articles. We're more than 10 times bigger than Wikipedia. So make of that what you will. But I think the point is a knowledge graph is just a really big machine-readable encyclopedia for fact-checking.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Now you opened up my mind, to see more ways, and it's just so great. So if you ever get a chance, obviously, look up Kalicube, visit the website. But more importantly, if you ever get a chance to sit in on a webinar where Jason's speaking, sit in on that webinar and just see what's possible with what can be done.
Super. Thank you. Well, I did one yesterday, and they made me cut out 10 slides. They said there's just too much. People are going to get overwhelmed. And in the end, they were completely right. I took them out, put them at the end, and said, if you want to read more, 10 slides at the end, download the slide deck. You're off to the races. And for me, I was just going, I didn't see the problem until somebody pointed it out to me. And I'm ashamed to say that idea that I'm making it simple is completely false.
Well, this show is, this will be very simple. We keep it really simple here. We got 6 stories about live podcasting coming up. I usually prep my guests and tell them I'm going to ask them one question before the theme song. I didn't prep Jason, but let's see if he knows. Jason, do you know what time it is?
Well, for me, it's 4:00 in the afternoon in France.
That's perfect.
What time is it?
We're on this side of the theme song with Jason Barnard of Kalicube. Jason, we had a great conversation before the show. We got a little bit, I call it witty banter before the theme song. And one of the things we were talking about with the knowledge graph, this was really interesting. You sent this to me about, and I'm thinking about this for a podcasting use case. And you said brands with live content see faster knowledge graph updates. Why is that something?
But before that, I'd like to say I'd love to be sitting in that chair. And I think you should get some kind of special effect that moves me there during the show.
We'll fix it in post.
Yeah, the live or consistent content is super important. The thing about the knowledge graph is or Google in general, it's like a child. It's waiting for things. It's looking for things. And when it expects you to update, when it expects something new from you every week, it will come looking for it because it expects it. And I do that with my podcast every Tuesday. It's always on a Tuesday. And the knowledge graph, Google's knowledge graph, but also the search engine, and indeed Gemini, the LLM, comes looking for that content on the dot on the Tuesday because it knows it's going to be there. So what you then get is a consistency of the engines, Google, ChatGPT, Bing, Perplexity, coming and collecting your information because they know there will be new information every, in my case, Tuesday. And then the consistency beats authenticity. I think what I mean by that is, as you say, anyone can be authentic. So be authentic. I wouldn't ever put anything negative about that. But whatever authenticity you have, keep it consistent, because inconsistency confuses. Once again, Google, ChatGPT, Bing, Perplexity, they're all like children. They don't like inconsistency.
And you also, when you say they're like children too, they're thirsty for knowledge. And the more knowledge you can provide them and feed them, the more they're going to learn about you.
Yeah, and I've evolved that Google as a child thing. I've been saying that for 7 or 8 years now. Google's a child. It's thirsty for knowledge. It wants to learn. And it's a lovely analogy. But I just realized a few months ago, that's not business. It's actually your untrained sales force currently selling for the competition. And you need to train it so it's selling for you. So basically what's happening is AI, Google, ChatGPT, Perplexity are talking to your audience 24/7. And they're currently selling for the competition. Just sit down and say, well, how am I going to train these AI sales force engines to work for me and to sell for me and not for the competition?
One of the things I was looking through your history, you mentioned musician earlier before the show, punk folk music, right? And I grew up in the 80s and 90s. I grew up skateboarding. I grew up immersed in punk rock. And I noticed that as I've gotten older, the same people who are in the same types of cultural things that I was in are the people who are able to really expand their mind around different concepts. And do you think any of that, like independent, music production, the DIY mentality of producing your own music and punk folk, do you think any of that plays into really how you're able to see the internet and view the world in this different way?
Well, that's a philosophical question. Did I go into music because I see the world differently, or do I see the world differently because I went into music? Uh-oh. And I would argue the former. I see the world differently, and I think I've come to accept it. I actually did one of those super tests that you do of your personality and who you are, and the idea is to help me understand how to work better. And am I actually very good at my job as a CEO? And the answer is not really, unfortunately. And it comes up with the different aspects. I can't remember quite what they were. And I thought, I'm going to score about equal on all of them. And I actually scored the top mark on 2 of them and the bottom mark on all of the other 4. And I was thinking, but I can do all the other 4, like strategist and implementer and I can't remember what the other, bringing people together. But I scored highest on innovative thought and polishing things, so making things perfect. And it's really contradictory because on one side, I'm going off and saying I have this completely new idea. And on the other side, I'm being a perfectionist about implementing it, which doesn't make sense. And for information, I don't know whether, that was it. So I think that's who I am. And I've pretended to be somebody else in order to keep the company going. I've learned to do all these things like building things and thinking of strategies and worrying about money, but I'm not actually naturally very good at them.
Well, I mean, being innovative and putting the polish on it, from start to finish, right? That's as much of a DIY mindset as I can think about of, from start to finish. I had the ideation to the creation. That's kind of I can come up with a lot of ideas, but I don't put the polish on them. So I understand how that aspect works. So it's just interesting to hear that perspective of how you approach business and how you scored on that.
Yeah, no, I understand. But what I found really interesting about the analysis was that I come up with lots of ideas, and they're a bit they're out of the box, and they're going to change things in the industry, and that's what I've been doing. I'm really bad at strategizing, and my team hate me because I keep changing the strategy. Because, oh, there's a new idea, and off we go. And so that's really bad. So I now know I'm bad at that, and I've got to stop. I'm not very good at building the thing, or I don't enjoy building the thing, but I enjoy polishing it. So what I actually need to do, have the idea, give it to a team, they build it, they give it back to me, and I finish it off. That's the plan as of the day before yesterday.
Yeah, that's something that I've learned to rely on too. Is you have certain strengths, and other people have the strengths that can fill in the gaps. Where if I can come up with ideas but not always execute on them, I can find somebody that can do that part of it.
Oh, 100%. And being kind of self-aware enough, I'm going through a phase at my age of radical self-clarity, trying to be incredibly honest with myself. And it's really going well. It's a bit upsetting for me and for other people around me, but I think the result is very positive. I feel good about it. I haven't got any friends left, of course, but that's a different problem.
Well, Jason Barnard, Kalicube, all the links will be in the show notes. If that webinar you did yesterday was public, I will put a link to that as well if it's available for other people to view, just to see some of the things we were talking about.
Yeah.
So are you ready to get into our first story?
Yeah, I am. I'm sorry. I was getting a bit carried away with myself there.
No, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing all that. I always get curious because every time I've brought up punk rock and skateboarding and that mentality, there's always this through line of creativity and viewing the world differently. And I always was just curious if that applied to you as well.
Yeah, well, I think I went into punk folk music because I was adventurous. And I thought I can go and play in the street. And then once we decided we wanted to become rock stars and stop playing in the street, it's the idea I can create my own record company, even though that's not something most people do. At the time, it costs a fortune to go into a studio. And that belief and that vision is what made it work. And we were professional punk folk musicians for 10 years. Wow, cool. Right, sorry, back with the show. Sorry, I've gone off track again.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much. Let's get into the first story. We're going live with a puzzle day. International Puzzle Day was on, I think, Thursday of this week. And this is an idea of a podcast who does puzzles and games and quizzes. And they tied in their podcast with an event that was happening. And so this is one strategy you can use for your podcast. Hello Puzzlers celebrated U.S. National Puzzle Day with a one-off live stream interactive episode, bringing their fast, funny, brain-teasing format to YouTube for a shared real-time experience. Hosted by New York Times bestselling author A.J. Jacobs and Chief Puzzle Officer Greg Pliska, the show is designed specifically for a live audience with custom puzzles, comedy, and participation baked into the format. Featuring guests from comedy, escape rooms, and puzzle culture, this event highlights how niche podcasts can create appointment-based moments, deepen fan loyalty, and extend their brand beyond the feed without abandoning their core audience. And this is kind of something we were talking about earlier about being authentic, being consistent, and being there in the moment. Like, if people are talking about Puzzle Day and you're creating content about Puzzle Day, there's a way that you're probably going to get attached to, and piggyback on some of that news cycle.
Yeah, brilliant. I would add to that, the child wants consistency, but throw a bit of a surprise in there from time to time, and you're going to make the child even happier. That's what they're doing, is they're doing a special event that the child thinks, oh, wow, this is exciting. So I would add that. Sorry.
Yeah, be spontaneous, and there's probably, no matter what your podcast is about, there are probably national days or ways to celebrate things in your industry. And this podcast was able to capitalize that, piggyback on it, and they did get a ton of press coverage out of this. They were on Pod News, they were on Sounds Profitable. All these other news stories covered it while I was waiting to do this Saturday morning with Jason. I heard it on 3 other shows. So that's a great way to get additional media attention, additional backlinks to your podcast, to your show, to the live stream channel on YouTube, and just tying into current events got Hello Puzzlers all that extra coverage.
Super. Yeah. I don't know if has we call it in France the Fête de la Musique, which is the 21st of June, longest day of the year, and any street musician or any musician is allowed to play in the street anywhere as loud as they like from 10 a.m. till 11 p.m.
Well, we know where we'll find you on February 21st.
No, it's June the 21st, longest day of the year. And in France, it's something that started in the 1980s, late 1980s. It's now across Europe, and I would love it if it went everywhere, because it's really lovely in the village I live in. You've literally got 50 groups playing in the street and trying to organize each other not to play over each other. It's super.
Well, that'd be amazing. I would definitely take a vacation day for that.
Yeah.
Let's keep it going. We'll go into the soap industry. Not soap, detergent, soap as in TV shows, soap operas. Natalie Cassidy, best known for her decades-long role as Sonia Fowler on EastEnders, is taking her hit podcast Live with Nat on the road with a live show at Colchester Arts Center. With more than 4.5 million listens and consistent top 40 rankings on Spotify, Cassidy's move into live podcasting highlights a growing trend. Established public figures using live shows to deepen fan connection, turn conversations into experiences, and extend their personal brand beyond the screen and into the room. This is one of those, here's somebody established as a celebrity who has national recognition. Maybe I'm not sure if they're still on that soap opera or not, but they're extending their relevancy into the public by connecting directly with their fans through a podcast, through live shows. And this is a way to get out into the world and meet some fans face to face.
Yeah, and you've got, strangely enough, a live studio that you're currently sitting in that people can use. So there's a nice crossover for you. And the other thing that I find really interesting there is at Kalicube, we spend our lives getting people to take those offline opportunities or those offline moments and put them online so that the algorithms can see them. And we're doing that for a client right now. It's saying, you spoke at a conference, let's get that conference online. Talk about who you saw, who you met, what you did. Because otherwise, Google, ChatGPT, Perplexity, and others can't see it. And it's a great way to build up credibility and authority.
That's a great tip and something you probably don't even think about. Most people are worried about, catching their flight, getting to the event, trying to perform their speech on stage in front of the audience. And then when they're done, they're done. They probably walk off. They maybe have some meetings afterwards, and then they go back to their lives. But who knew what happened on that stage? Like it's if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, did it actually make a sound? That concept applies to things you're doing in real life. If you don't log them online, there's no way Google's ever going to know that you did them.
Yep.
Let's keep it moving. We'll go to story number 3. Bigger isn't better if you lose the noise that matters. Now, I picked this one. I think I'm still I'm building on that punk rock mentality and that DIY mentality. I love this story. Podcasting is clearly entering its next era. Bigger platforms, video dominance, touring shows, even Netflix testing podcasts as part of its content strategy. But with that growth comes real risk, losing the trust, intimacy, and authenticity that made podcasts work in the first place. As podcasts scale, creators and brands are being warned not to confuse reach with resonance and not to polish away the real conversation audiences actually show up for. The question now isn't whether podcasts can get bigger, but whether they can grow without losing their voice. And this is one of the things you always hear about people who are early to find a band, find new music. It was always special until they got too big. Then once it got too big, it kind of lost that intimacy, that special connection. And this article was kind of about that theory. If podcasting gets too large, does it just become television? Does it just become stadium events? Does it lose that connection with the audience? And it's a valid question to pose to podcasters and to the audience.
But then don't we just move into a sphere where some podcasts are going to become like TV and other podcasts are going to stay for the medium-sized audience and we're still going to have the niche podcasts? Then the only problem or the only question that I would be asking is the visibility and the capacity or the opportunities for a small podcast to get that audience is going to become more difficult. And we end up with that situation we had in the web when I started in 98, where a small website could become huge because the opportunities were there and the openings were there. And then over the 2000s, the bigger companies started to manage to suppress, if you like, or take the place of, or reduce the opportunities of the smaller websites. I think AI is a great opportunity, again, for the small players to get a place, get a foothold. If you get in early, you can get your place. And if you get your place early on, I believe that you will keep that place if you're smart.
Yeah, it's not just utilizing AI in your day-to-day life. Like this theater is a one-man show with the editing, the show notes, but also what you're talking about too, Jason, is training the AI to recognize you as some of the answers it provides. So now you're kind of going full circle with doing the live events, but now AI is aware of you enough to say, okay, here's some live events. Here's a live event theater in Tarentum in Pennsylvania. They do live podcasts. So a lot of times I ask friends in different parts of the world to ask questions about what is a podcast theater just to make sure I'm still popping up and getting cited. You know, that's a very important thing that Jason's talking about. And your industry, your niche, your podcast needs to be part of those answers. You need to start thinking about how do I get into that, and how do I get served as the answer?
Please, sir, you said answers. I would say conversation. You need to be part of the conversation between the user and the machine. So we're all talking to ChatGPT and Gemini and maybe even Google AI mode if you're in one of the countries that have got it. And we're having a conversation and we're asking these machines, for example, what can I do this weekend? And the machine, ChatGPT, knows you and it knows what you like. So what it says to you is not the same as it's going to say to somebody else. And if it knows you love podcasts, if it knows that you like hanging out with podcasters, it will say, oh, there's a live podcast event in your town, go and see it. So being part of that conversation is hugely important because AI has the ability that Google never had to bring the right people to your door.
One of the things we were talking about AI, and this is going to be a little bit of a tangent, but AI is going to start to incorporate ads within their answers. And some of the early estimates, the cost per thousand could be like $60 to $80. And whereas you look at maybe Facebook or Google, you can get display ads. You cost per thousand $5 to $20 in that range. What I found interesting is people complaining about getting served an answer 1,000 times for $60. The relationship between the user and who's asking the questions in ChatGPT, they already have an interest in that answer from ChatGPT. They believe the answer they get is going to be a pretty relevant answer to themselves. They trust ChatGPT. And to get 1,000 impressions for $60 where the machine is telling the user this is one of the best choices, I think the $60 CPM might be a steal at this point.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point that most people miss. And it's interesting to hear you say that. The idea that we use these machines, we choose ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude because we trust them. And they're our recommender, they're a recommendation engine. And the price of the ad within that context is definitely worth more than it is on search. Because on search, you've got a choice of 10. In a conversation with an AI, it's going to give you a choice of 1, maybe 2, but really only 1. And we call that the perfect click.
Yeah, so I'm looking, I forgot to put up the slide for the last story, but on this page, there's display ads, right? They're just natively existing alongside this content. It's not, you're not as interested in those. But if I were to ask ChatGPT, what should I do this weekend, like Jason was saying, and one of the events, I sponsor one of the events, and it cost me $60 to reach 1,000 people in the Pittsburgh area, then what better way to spend $60 than to tell 1,000 people I'm part of the events for today?
Yep.
So I'm pretty excited about that. That's a little bit of a tangent. Let's keep it moving. We're moving right along. We're going to an exchange podcast. This is at an ETF summit, investing in podcasts on the main stage. The Exchange Conference is elevating podcasting from side content to centerpiece by launching a dedicated podcast stage featuring some of the most respected voices in the EFT and financial advisory world. Instead of podcast reporting after the conference, Exchange is putting these shows front and center live in the room, giving advisors direct access to real-time insight, debate, and expert thinking. It's a powerful signal that podcasts are no longer fringe media, but trusted authority platforms shaping how entire industries learn, connect, and move forward. Here's an example of you have a podcast about doing trading, ETFs, and there's somebody at my door that keeps knocking, it keeps distracting. Here's a conference that's starting to realize that these podcasters have such a connection to the audience that they are going to put them on the main stage as part of the entertainment to entertain the audience. You can't build that kind of trust and authenticity rather than being part of the event where the event organizers and inviting you up on the main stage. They're going to showcase you to an audience full of people who love what you're talking about.
Well, I was kind of almost ahead of the curve there because I started my podcast in 2019. And what I did was contact conferences, digital marketing conferences around the world, and said to them, can I have a press pass? I've got a podcast. And I got press passes for all of them. I had to pay my own travel and my own hotel, but I went to all these conferences and then just hung around. And when I heard a conversation between two people that I thought was interesting, I would ask one of the people, do you want to do a podcast episode? And we would just do it in the corridor. And that was how I started. I did 5 or 6 for each one. And I traveled around the world twice on that idea. And I learned so much about digital marketing. That's probably when I upskilled the most, is just by grabbing people when they were having an interesting conversation, saying, let's have that conversation on a podcast episode. And I asked them the questions that I found interesting, ended up with a great podcast episode, ended up with a lot of new knowledge for me, and got to travel the world. What could be nicer?
Tapping into what you were doing was getting a press pass and really connecting with some of the experts in the industry. We hear that strategy all the time with podcasters. They get a media kit, they get a press pass, and they're able to attend these conferences, these amazing conferences with some of the thought leaders for free. They're able to get content from the event and share that as their podcast. And then they may not realize this, but they're also promoting that event for 6 months after, really building that momentum towards next year's event.
And by the way, if you want to go and answer the door, I'll keep everybody occupied and entertained while you go and see who it is.
They're not leaving; they're still here. So hold on one second. Let's do a quick note about Kalicube.
Yeah, well, I'm going to keep everybody occupied with Kalicube and what we do and what I love. I mean, I think for me, the most important thing about Kalicube is I found a universal truth, which is how to educate the algorithms, how to train them, how to change the way they perceive you so that they will help you with your own promotion. So they become a great amplifier. They're the biggest influencers in the world. And my belief is, because it's universal and because I think it's very important, we give it all away for free. So if you visit kalicube.com/guide, you can download all of this stuff for free. And the reason I come on podcasts like this is because I want to share it. And I want everybody to be able to take control. For me, it's an existential question. Do you control the brand narrative of yourself, your company, your podcast, or your product in Google, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Copilot, all of these engines? And if you do, then you can feel very comfortable that as AI takes over more and more and it's getting quite scary, you don't have to be as scared because you know that they understand who you are, what you do, who you serve, and they will represent you the way that you want. And that is, for me, something that helps me to sleep at night. So I hope it was somebody interesting at the door. And I was just telling everybody that they can get the free content to control what Google and AI say about them by going to the website kalicube.com. We're not selling anything here. It's all free.
Yeah, I did see you can do a report as yourself or as your company and get great insights. How's Google seeing you? It was really good. I was going through it last night, and I definitely want to get a report on myself. I don't have a knowledge graph from Google, but I do. Jeff Revilla is pretty rare as far as the search. So I dominate the search engine, but I don't get like the right rail. I really want to see myself on the right rail.
Yeah, it looks cool, doesn't it? But the other thing is you have those now in ChatGPT sometimes. So as you're using ChatGPT, you have something that looks like that knowledge panel. And the knowledge panel, for anybody who doesn't know, is just a factual representation of a person or a company with a description, some photos and information, for example, in my case, who I was married to, who my mother is, which schools I went to, with what college degree I have. And it's a really rich representation of fact about you. Once again, as you were saying, people trust these machines. They use them because they trust them. And if ChatGPT says I went to Liverpool John Moores University, then I did. And if it gets it wrong, people are going to believe the wrong thing about me. And that's dangerous.
Yeah, the feeding that knowledge, like you said, like it's a child who's hungry. And the more that you can provide it, like this event with the ETF Summit, if you were up on stage, that's something you need to put online and start to feed that knowledge graph, feed Google so that they know where you were, what you're doing, who you are, who's linking to you, why are you an expert in the field. Then you start to get served up as these answers. You become the results. You become the authority in your industry.
Oh, I can make a point here. You're explaining this much better than I do.
I don't think so.
Oh, you are, but you're making it understandable. You've just taken what I said. Now everyone's going, now I get it.
Well, if you want to keep it, we'll keep it on my level, and let's take it to pizza. I like pizza a lot.
Me too.
There's a good segue. Why Pizza Podcasts win Google and Heart. So this is a good one. The Jersey Eats podcast, part of the USA Today network, proves that live podcasting doesn't have to go big to go deep. In a recent episode, hosts zeroed in on one simple topic: where to find the best pizza in North Jersey, blending reporting, opinion, and local passion into a tight, trust-driven conversation. From classic Jersey slices to Detroit-style and New Haven-inspired pies, the show highlights how hyper-local expertise and authentic voices can build loyal audiences, strong credibility, and long-term relevance across podcast platforms and YouTube. If this isn't your playbook, Jason, I don't know what is. This is exactly what you've been talking about the whole time. This is a USA Today. It's a big paper conglomerate in the United States. Their local affiliate is covering a story about the best pizza slices in the world. Now, if you don't think that adds weight to those establishments, that this major newspaper establishment is giving credibility to these Jersey pizza slices, you're crazy, right? This is the gold standard of getting recognized and getting acknowledged for the quality of your product.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a brilliant point. And number one is hyperlocal is really important. I think often people try to aim too big. That I want to be present across the US, when in fact they just need to be present in North Jersey, because people aren't going to go all the way across America to go to that particular pizza bar. And the other is missed opportunities. I've been working on on my platform today. It's a software platform that's basically got my brain in it. I'm putting my brain into software, and one of the points I'm trying to make the most of is all of the things we've done in our lives that bring credibility and authority, but we forget about. And I made a list of all the things I've done that I thought brought credibility, and I listed maybe 20. And then I set my little program working, and it found another 20. Like, I worked with Wix. Wix was a client. Ahrefs have been a client. SEMrush have been a client. Yoast have been a client. And I'd kind of forgotten all of them. And I wasn't making the most of them. And all I now have to do is talk about it, like I just did, and bring these pieces of information that I know about, that aren't very obvious online, that I have proof for online, and say, I work with Wix. They were a client of mine. Here's the proof. And I link out to where it says Wix was a client of Jason Barnard and Kalicube.
Yeah.
I'm bringing that back to the story. It's whichever pizza parlor has been mentioned in that podcast. If you're watching this, make a meal of it. And the joke was intended.
Yeah, if you're in this list, you need to put that content onto your pages, onto your social media. Yeah. You need to also our first story was piggybacking off of the National Puzzle Day. If you're one of the 40 pizza shops, you better piggyback off the back of the story that mentioned you as one of the best slices in Jersey.
And just by the way, from a European perspective, You just said 40 pizza shops in a small area of the US as though it's completely normal. In Europe, 40 pizza shops in a small area is a completely weird idea.
Well, if you're going to me, there's 40 pizza shops in my town that I'm in. There's 40,000 pizza shops probably across America.
Oh, right. Okay. So you actually meant just the best 40. I was thinking 40 is a huge number.
Yeah, that's just isolating the best ones. There's 100 times more than that.
So can I understand from this that Americans like pizza?
Oh yeah, have you seen Americans? We're carb heavy, is it? Well, I'd be like I know in Europe and England, like the Indian cuisine, the curry food. Ooh. That is like your pizza shops.
Yes, that would be the equivalent. If you said to me 40 Indian restaurants, I would assume you meant the 40 best because there are probably 40,000.
And they better have it on their knowledge graph that they're one of the 40 best. Well, this has been so much fun, and we're already at our last story, and I'm going to tie it back in with Podcast Movement here. For the first time ever, Podcast Movement Evolutions is officially embedded inside South by Southwest, signaling a major shift in how podcasting is viewed within the broader media ecosystem. Evolutions 2026 will take over downtown Austin venue with live programming, recording studios, panels, and performances, blurring the line between podcast conference, live media experience, and cultural event. With support from platforms like YouTube and a lineup that includes creators, advertisers, and media leaders, this move positions podcasting not as an adjacent format, but as a core player in entertainment, business, and culture. This is the heart of podcasting. This is an event that's about podcasting, featuring podcasters, put on by podcasters, companies, sponsors who are supporting the audio mediums. And just as a random side note, I made a connection this past week with a gentleman named Paul Cranwell. He's in Europe, England, I believe, and he introduced me to Brian Barletta. And today is Brian Barletta's birthday. He's the Sounds Profitable founder of Sounds Profitable and putting together Podcast Movement at South by Southwest. So happy birthday to Brian. And he gave me a full statement. We were talking about this independent media mentality. How do younger, smaller shows really benefit from a podcast media? And he gave me a full statement. I have a clip of it up here. His goal with the changes of bringing both Evolutions and South by Southwest together, and their primary event in New York City is to evolve the industry. And when you read the statement that I'm going to put in the show notes, the event is free. The content after the event is free. This is an event that's bringing podcasters together to elevate the entire industry. So if you want to position yourself as a leader, as moving the entire industry, an event like this, partnering with South by Southwest, which is one of the biggest events that happen in America early in the year, there's no better way to piggyback, again, here's that piggyback word again, on top of something than to place podcasting in the heart of South by Southwest.
I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, getting out there and making yourself a thought leader by associating yourself with a huge organization is great. Question is always, how do you get that to happen? And I would argue it's by getting out there, pitching up and being there and being seen, or actually the physical contact with people. And that's what happened for me with my podcast tour of the world, is I met so many people. And the difference between meeting them in person at an event and talking to them face to face and being online is absolutely huge. And can I make another point, which has got nothing to do with that? It's about my name. Because you said the word adjacent, and the word Jason jumps out of that. So every time anyone says the word adjacent, I go, ooh, but there's more. If you think about the calendar in English, July, August, September, October, November spells Jason. And in technical SEO, you add schema markup to websites, and the format is called Jason. So every time we talk about the technical aspect of SEO, with that particular thing, everyone keeps saying Jason, and I keep going, what? Yep, what? And the same thing with the Jason. So there you go. I was just thinking of that. It's completely random, nothing to do with the last story, but I thought it was kind of funny.
Well, imagine if you could start to control the conversation around July, August, September, October, November, and your name always popped up when people were searching for the months.
I would become world famous for something completely pointless.
Well, Jason, I appreciate your time so much today. This was exceeded all my expectations. I've had so much fun. I've learned so much, and I can't wait to even see the webinar you were talking about earlier in the show. One last time, I know you got to give a little talk while I was getting the door, talking about Kalicube. Anything else you want to leave the viewers with? Anything you want to really inspire people to get out there and do today?
I'd like to sing a song. A quick goodbye to end the show. Thank you, Poduty and the news.
Well, that's better than my theme song. I don't even know if I want to play my theme song out of here.
Oh, no, I was grooving to your theme song.
Well, I forgot to tell you. I asked, hey, what time is it? And I don't tell people what to say. They can say whatever they want. So when you told me the time, that's the best answer. I love when people tell me the time. So
it was the most obvious answer. It's such a surprising question. I thought you were saying, oh, it must be a different time over there in the front. Or I could have said, it's time for a cup of tea.
It's time for a cup of tea. Thank you, Jason. Check out Kalicube. We're going back to that theme song.
What time is it?